It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk right here via StreamYard on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. I want to thank you all for joining us here on this special President's Day edition, ladies and gentlemen, of the broadcast. And certainly, again, I appreciate you tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so. As always, I am New Jersey's premier journalist, top 100 Latino, via Latino Spirit Online magazine, and of course, the sworn enemy of all the latte liberals, do-nothing progressives, social justice clowns, and all the woke fools throughout the state of New Jersey. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, standing up against all of them because you know what? Somebody has to. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for tuning in here. Of course, the special President's Day edition. Hope you got to enjoy this day off, whether it's with your kids, your loved ones, and just, sort of enjoying some nice weather today. It was sunny in the 50s. Hey, hopefully spring is right around the corner. And let me just say this, though, too, because I tend to sort of start off the program being a little braggadocious, and why not? And you know what? I think I'll do that right now. Let me have a little tea for my Rutgers men's basketball team for, you know what? Getting themselves into a really good position as March Madness is right around the corner. So let me have a little tea here, and that tastes so good. And of course, nobody wants to play the Rutgers men's basketball team as March Madness approaches. So I'm really proud of my boys out down there in Piscataway. Let's keep it going during this Big Ten conference schedule as it is winding down here in 2022. But folks, while we had a day off today, politics never takes a break here on the show. And of course, I'll continue to bring you the very best guests each and every week via Jersey First. You can always check out their outstanding content by going to www.jerseyfirst.org. That's Jersey, the number one ST.org. Make sure you like Jersey First on Facebook and make sure to follow them on both Instagram and Twitter. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the exclusives that nobody else brings you in New Jersey media. And this week, it's no exception. Joining us here tonight, my good friend, he is the distinguished state senator here in the state of New Jersey, down in LD1, all the way in South Jersey. He's also a very devoted pro wrestling fan as well. Folks, let's welcome Michael Testa here tonight to Real Talk. Senator, how are you? Welcome.
I'm doing great, Fernando. It's great to be back on your show. I sort of almost got, an early start on your show when I was a candidate, and we've sort of had this love fest going on between us because we're conservatives who can't stand wokeism and radical leftism, and we want to stomp it out every possible chance that we get. So it's great to be back here.
Thank you, Senator. And listen, I'm really the only journalist, Senator, that's standing up against all this madness, right? I mean, if we wait for Uncle Dave with NJTV or Maxie Pizarro with Insider NJ or, Tommy Boy Tom Moran with the Star Ledger to actually take a stand against all this stupidity, we might be waiting until the Mets win a World Series, Senator. I mean, let's be honest.
Look, Max is a very good friend of mine. I mean, he's been kind to me, but the truth of the matter is that there aren't enough of us out there actually following the real science, following the real data, and common sense. There's an old saying that common sense, the problem with it is that it ain't so common, and that's absolutely true. And what we're seeing for the past couple years is people who apparently really love to be controlled, and that's what's been so disturbing to me. When you have, and I know you're very happy about Rutgers, and, God bless them. They're going on a great run in the tournament. They're peaking for the tournament. They're peaking at the right time. But think about this, Rutgers University had a vaccine mandate for people who were learning remotely. Yeah. What sense did that make? I mean, you think about things of that nature. How can that be scientific at all? Someone who's never leaving the confines of their home or office, who are taking online courses, were mandated to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Folks who were never going to step on Rutgers campus in New Brunswick and were never going to interact with any other students. I mean, it's things like that need to be pointed out because they're insane.
Senator, you're absolutely right. And it pains me, again, that my alma mater engaged in such madness. And again, sort of being perpetuated by what's coming out of Trenton, right? I mean, unfortunately, higher education is at the mercy of Trenton. And we saw that, right, throughout COVID. And we're seeing it as we're trying to get back to normal on our college campuses. But we'll delve into that a little bit later, Senator. But obviously, the biggest news right now in the news cycle has been really the hysteria that's going around about redistricting and sort of the impact it's had in several legislative districts. Up here in Hudson County, where I live, I mean, my goodness, we're almost prepping for a civil war between two very highly powerful state senators, right? State Senator Brian Stack, my state senator, where I live up here currently in LD 33, right next door with LD 32 with State Senator Nicholas Sacco. And of course, other state senators are sort of facing the crunch as well, as redistricting has really sort of thrown everything into a, sort of, I don't know, a ball of madness and hoopla. What can you tell us about, what you've heard in Trenton, what you've been privy to, and quite frankly, what's going to happen for the foreseeable future?
First and foremost, I want to say that, obviously the Republican Revolution started in Legislative District 1 with myself, Eric Simonson, and Antoine McClellan. We were the proverbial tip of the spear, so to speak, for a real change in the state of New Jersey in 2019. 2020, as we know, sort of put everything on hold because it was because of COVID-19, the largest pandemic the United States has seen in over a century. And everything was vote by mail. So momentum was stalled a little bit. But then you saw 2021 and you saw, our 7-point margin go to 30 points in Legislative District 1. You saw Legislative District 2 pick up 2 assembly seats and retain the Senate seat of Senator Palestina. You saw Legislative District 3 completely flipped. You saw Legislative 8 completely flipped. Legislative District 11, 2 assembly seats picked up, and Senator Gopal, who has been, an ally of mine across the aisle, escaped with a narrow win. So, you saw some people who were shocked. I wasn't shocked. I've been sort of beating this drum the way you've been beating the drum for a very long time, that people are waking up, that they're not happy with the status quo, that they don't want New Jersey to be the California of the East Coast. They want New Jersey to be New Jersey, right? I mean, why would New Jersey want to imitate anyone else? We're the best, right? I mean, we're proud of New Jersey. We're tough. We have diversity. We have, between the mountains, sort of where, Senator Uriho is, all the way to the beach where I am in Legislative District 1. We have just the best food, I would say, in the United States of America. We have so much here we should be proud of. Why would we want to imitate anybody else? The hullabaloo about redistricting, I think you've really seen, was that article. I don't know if you saw it, by former Senate President Steve Sweeney. He said that, when the Democrats had a 650,000 voter advantage in the state of New Jersey, that the map was far better than today, where they have 1 million voter advantage. That under his watch, and had he still been on the commission, that this would not have happened, where you're pitting Democratic senators against each other. I mean, look, from the South, I get to just kind of sit back, watch, and relax. And, my beverage of choice won't be an iced tea like yours is right now. And I'll watch the fireworks that are taking place within the Democratic Party, because let's face it, as a Republican, it feels really good to watch Democrats fighting with each other. And that is absolutely what's going to happen up in Hudson County. It has to happen, right? I mean, there's no really other way around that. But it's good for Republicans. I think the pendulum is swinging the other way. And, we saw, like I said, in Legislative District 1, we set the mark for the highest watermark ever for margin of victory and for the most amount of votes ever in our legislative district. If that isn't something for everyone to look at and take note, hey, what happened down in LD1, LD2, LD3, LD8, LD11, then they're just asleep at the wheel.
I'm with you, Senator. And speaking of last November, I actually want to let me pick your brain about that a little bit. And I was one of the few journalists on record that predicted the margin in the gubernatorial race. Now, again, let me be very clear. Listen, I would have been very happy had Jack won, but I sort of looked at these variables, Senator. I looked at the fact that, again, Democrats have more than 1 million more registered Democrats in the voter roll. I knew that countywide, especially in the northern part of New Jersey, that the Democratic machines, I mean, not the devices themselves, but the apparatuses, the parties, were going to mobilize a lot for Governor Murphy. And, I said, hey, I think the governor's going to squeak this out because of these variables by, let's say, 2 or 3 points. And everyone, I got so many DMs and emails and texts saying, you're crazy. I got a lot of free dinners coming my way, Senator, for the record, because of all this. Again, I would have liked to see Jack win, but I kind of said, well, realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if the governor got reelected, and he did. But what I said completely was that I think that a lot of people on the left or Democrats or middle of the road Democrats, I think we're not aware about collectively how there were so many pockets of the state that were upset with Governor Murphy about what he did with COVID. How we've learned already, Senator, that taking a one-size-fits-all approach was the wrong move. It should have been a regional approach to dealing with COVID. We saw that in Florida. We saw that in Texas. I had the privilege of visiting those two great freedom-loving states in 2021, okay? And I saw the way COVID was handled. Now, again, I said, I think there are pockets of the state that are very unhappy with the governor. I think polling did not reflect that. And let's be honest, the governor was very fortunate to squeak out a win. Now, again, it wasn't an overwhelming mandate. It's not something that I would listen. I'll go on record right now. This is not something, unlike Governor Christie in 2013. I don't think this is something the governor can run on should he choose higher office. Listen, he barely squeaked by in a blue state, maybe purplish state, if anything. I think that's something to keep an eye out for. But more importantly, though, Senator, it was for Democrats. I think it was a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call because we saw it 5 hours south on Route 95 in Virginia. We mentioned it in districts down in South Jersey. Listen, in 2022, if Democrats and people on the left want to die on a hill on all this woke nonsense, and let me be very clear, because while I'm a compassionate person, you know, at the end of the day, Senator, I care about things that matter to regular people. I don't care about bathrooms. I don't care about pronouns. I don't care about all this woke nonsense. I care about gas prices being crippling me at the pump. I care about supermarket shelves being emptier. I'm worried about, it's President's Day, but the last guy I ever want to honor is this sleepy guy right now who's probably, it's past his bedtime, so he's probably not watching this broadcast. Democrats better wake up and come back to the middle, because if they want to die in a hill on this woke nonsense, Senator, they're going to lose badly. We saw it last November, like you alluded to. I think that's the formula Republicans have to seize for the foreseeable future. Is that fair to say?
Look, you've said a lot, and it's very fair to say, Fernando. Everything that you said is on point. But the sad part is, and I did an article about this a little while ago. I don't think Governor Murphy and many North Jersey Democrats heard the message that came from South Jersey. I truly don't believe that they have. I think that they're in their echo chamber, you know, at a coffee shop in Ridgewood, sipping lattes. And look, I like lattes and espresso just as much as the next guy. People can look at my Facebook feed and know that. But you know, they're there talking to each other, and they're in that echo chamber that they're not getting out of, where all of this wokeism sounds like a really good idea. And they're in this Norman Rockwellian landscape that they can get away with it. But if they come to South Jersey, where people are, you know, putting the sticker of Joe Biden saying, I did that at the gas pump, right? You know, if you've seen that sticker, and people who are complaining about gas prices, people who are complaining at the supermarket saying, wait a minute, this is what a gallon of milk cost a week ago. This is what it is today. This is how much bananas cost. This is how much beef costs. How come I can't get chicken? I mean, that was actually a real thing last week at one of the Acme's in my district. One of my constituents took a picture that there was no chicken at the supermarket, none whatsoever. It might have been 2 weeks ago. But you say to yourself, you know, this isn't the America we grew up in. That was the message that was being sent to me. You know, we have record high inflation, and yet somehow the Biden administration is doing a victory lap about that. And also Governor Murphy is doing a victory lap about his skin of the teeth margin win against Jack Ciattarelli. He should be taking a step back and saying, hey, wait a minute, what just happened? You know, he won by a very narrow margin and lost, you know, one of the strongest, if not the strongest Senate president in the history of the state of New Jersey. I mean, this was a mandate type election. And to your point about how we should have taken a regional approach, I can't agree with you more, Fernando. This is something that I said in July of 2020, not 2021, when my legislative district, which comprises all of Cape May County, which obviously heavily relies on tourism and tourism tax dollars, and Trenton relies on the tourism tax dollars that go into the general fund rather than going back to the district for things like infrastructure and things of that nature that would really help my legislative district. And I said, wait a minute, my legislative district accounts for less than 2% of all COVID-19 positive cases in the state. Yet you've placed all of these draconian measures on all of these business owners that probably won't be here next year. And the truth of the matter is we know that is the case, that 1/3 of all of our small businesses across the state of New Jersey are never going to open their doors again because of the Murphy mandates.
It's brutal. And you mentioned it perfectly. Back in the summer of 2020, not 21, 2020, you were really vocal about how poor of an effort this was by the governor's office, by the Department of Health. And I understand that, listen, people on the left want to talk about whatever it is that, oh, well, we're Monday morning quarterbacking now. No, we're not. We knew what science was telling us, right? And isn't it funny about the left, though, Senator? They like science when it suits them, right? When it comes to COVID, oh, it's all about following the science. But when it comes to, letting boys play in girls' sports, yeah, for some reason they failed high school biology, and somehow science doesn't matter then. I mean, it's ridiculous what the left sort of likes to live and die on. But getting back to COVID real quick, because listen, we're seeing what science has told us. We're seeing, obviously, how the state, obviously, and thankfully, COVID diagnoses are down. We're seeing less and less hospitalizations. But this is something, and I know that you were very vocal about this, where the governor, I think, maybe just a few weeks ago, was talking about mask mandates in our public schools. And we all know the harmful effect it's had on our kids for the last 2 years. I can't even begin to even think about what a study will look like in the foreseeable future, Senator, that someone's going to do diagnosing what harm this did to our kids cognitively, socially, psychologically. That study may not be available for years to come, but we've seen what the impact it's had. And if COVID is down in New Jersey and we're seeing hospitalizations really drastically, just decline, why are we waiting until March to remove mask mandates in schools? If it's okay now, why are we waiting a whole month? This is crippling our kids, Senator. It's really suffocating our teachers. It's suffocating, again, businesses. It's just, there's an element of tone deafness coming out of Trenton. I'm not saying that to be mean, but I have eyes. That's what my eyes tell me.
You're not saying it to be mean. Look, myself, Assemblyman Simonson, and Assemblyman McClellan sent a one-line letter to the governor in 2021. It said, "Unmask our kids." That's what it said. That's all it said. Because we knew even back then that, thank God, our public schools were not super spreading events for COVID-19. And the great thing about children is that they weren't suffering the most harmful side effects of contracting COVID-19 should they become infected with COVID-19. That's wonderful news to all of us, especially a parent like myself who has 3 children. But you're absolutely right. I get messages, whether it's in from Facebook, email, my law firm's email, my legislative email, phone calls from parents and teachers who are saying that they are seeing all of the ills that you and I unfortunately predicted. Sometimes you don't like to be right, Fernando. We were right about this. And we don't even necessarily want to be right about this. But they're saying how it's affected children's speech. It's affected their ability to socialize. Children are anxious now, actually. They're experiencing anxiety for, if they're allowed to go to the mall without a mask on. I've heard from so many parents who were saying that their child is saying, "But mommy, daddy, I don't want to go inside. I don't have a mask on me right now." And they're saying, "Listen, it's okay. You're going to be okay," because they become so conditioned. And if a child is 10 years old, they've spent 20% of their life wearing a mask, for every single activity. This is how nutty it is. I mean, it's very unfortunate. It's also affected children's speech. I'm hearing from speech therapists that children, their speech has been delayed because they're not speaking up. They're not properly articulating their words. And we're also leaving out a significant segment of the population that was really highlighted to me by Senate President Sweeney and Assemblyman Eric Simonson, my assemblymate, who taught special needs for the better part of 2 decades. The special needs students who were unable to go to school were really left behind. They were taken out of a routine. It was very difficult for many of them to learn online. And especially for our children who are on the spectrum, who have things like Asperger's or autism, they rely on routine. These children have been so far left behind due to the restrictions placed on them, for remote learning. Many of these kids were not remote learning. And, it's very interesting, Fernando, because I spoke about this on multiple occasions. Myself and Senator Uribe suffer from something called rural poverty, which really isn't understood in Trenton under the Gold Dome whatsoever. Everybody sort of takes for granted the fact that their smartphone is, they're always going to have internet access and things of that nature. Well, I can tell you that there's a significant portion of my legislative district, and I'll name the towns: Dennis Township in Cape May County, Commercial Township, Lawrence Township, Hopewell Township, and Down Township in Cumberland County. They don't have internet access, right? They don't have access to broadband. These kids were either going to a Walmart parking lot, a Starbucks parking lot, a McDonald's parking lot, or their school parking lot when they were supposed to be learning remotely so that they could actually learn remotely. I mean, this is how insane it was down here. And yet you hear about educational justice. You hear things like that. What about educational justice? I could tell you what's just: making sure that every kid has access to the internet should they have to learn remotely ever again. But you don't hear about that because it's not important. It's not that social justice warrior, flag that they want to fly.
Senator, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's funny how the left loves to market that and sort of come up with those hashtags, right? Social justice, climate justice, environmental justice, supermarket justice, whatever. And that's as important as anything when it comes to the development of our kids. Again, having access to education, having access to the same sort of, amenities that other school children throughout the state of New Jersey have access to. And you know what? I'm glad that you're being vocal about it, because someone has to be in the legislature. It's a very different part of the world, as they say, in South Jersey than it is in North Jersey when it comes to what's available to our school districts. And folks, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 6:21 here on the East Coast via Jersey First, live here on Facebook and also on YouTube. I welcome New Jersey State Senator Michael Testa out of Legislative District 1 here to the show tonight. Folks, one of the things that I'm so proud of Senator Testa is doing is the fact of being that voice for not just people down in South Jersey, as he mentioned about rural districts, but about regular, everyday, working class New Jerseyans that see what's going on in Trenton, that see what's going on with irresponsible spending, with this sort of catering to wokeism. And again, it's funny though, Senator, how, just because you have a D next to your name, just like if you have an R next to your name, they can be very different people in the party. And when you think about, again, case in point up here where I live in District LD 33, my state senator, Brian Stack, is also my mayor in the city I live in. But he's one of these sort of middle of the road Democrats, sort of a blue collar Democrat, understands the landscape of his constituency, and he's not catering to the far left of the party. And it just seems like those are Democrats that should have more of a voice, and they do in Trenton. But it seems like there's a small handful of leftists that, for whatever reason, feel that, catering to, and again, I don't really care how this sounds, but catering to illegals, coddling illegals, right? We're seeing, obviously, in the last few years, bestowing driver's licenses to illegals, right? We've had these insufferable activist organizations, whether it's Make the Road New Jersey or the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, right? Or other activists, right? Like the insufferable, Patty Campos Medina, Amy Torres, all these insufferable women who I wouldn't trust to bounce their checkbooks, much less give anything intelligent about economics. But somehow they have the ears of legislators, Senator. That's scary. And I'm really concerned as to why this isn't exposed more.
Well, look, when I was running for the first time in 2019, some of those groups that you mentioned showed up at debates wanting to make sure that I was going to be for driver's licenses for illegals. And, and I said it then, and I'll say it now. I always drew the analogy to the American Express commercial that we had when we grew up as kids, when they held the American Express card and said membership has its privileges. Well, so does citizenship, right? Citizenship should have its privileges. There should be a difference between someone who is a legal citizen of the United States and someone who is here illegally, who is not a citizen. And I've seen all of the signs, all of the rhetoric, no person is illegal, things of that nature. Well, here's the problem. I'm an attorney, and I actually practice in the municipal courts. I represent people on traffic offenses. every single piece of New Jersey jurisprudence when it deals with driver's licenses has always said that your driving license is a privilege, not a right. Somehow we allow this narrative, this woke narrative, to be heard and be told, and it's really shoved down the throats of New Jerseyans that a driver's license is a right. No, it is not. It has never been a right, but now it is, unfortunately. I mean, I voted against it. I think it's a real problem. I mean, you think about it, Fernando, you and I, when we have to go to renew our license, or when I got Real ID, I felt like I had to bring like my life's work in to, to get the amount of points necessary. Yet someone who is here not documented, not here legally, not necessarily going through the proper channels to even an attempt to become a citizen, and they're getting the same privileges as I am with less proof, that makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. But, again, this is where New Jersey has been going for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure, Fernando, 8-10 years ago, people called you crazy. And now they're saying, wow, Fernando, you were right. You were right about these things. Who saw this coming?
Senator, a lot of people won't say that openly. I mean, I'll get a lot of DMs and texts and emails from like, man, dude, you're right on a lot of what you say. I can't really say it like you do on the air. I'm like, and that's fine. I appreciate the support and everything else. But Senator, it's a sad reflection of our state, whether it's coddling illegals the way we do with driver's licenses, whether it's about in-state tuition, right? I know that the governor is so adamant about when it comes to dreamers and all that, all that gibberish I have to hear too. But now, and this is something I'm going to be talking about on my local podcast, is now the governor feels the need, along with the legislature, to now, bestow more funding or more checks out to illegals in New Jersey that for whatever reason didn't receive the necessary amount during the pandemic from pandemic funds and all that. Senator, let me be very clear how this sounds, because I know that you're much more of a gentleman. And again, you've got to be a little more diligent in what you're saying. I don't have to be. I could give 2 drops of piss about them. I care about citizens. I care about homeowners. Why isn't the legislature? Again, Democrats control the legislature for 20 years now. Why aren't you concerned more about homeowners? We have the highest property taxes in the country. Okay. My property taxes up here in Hudson County are approaching $10,000. Okay. Down by you, I'm sure there are many municipalities where property taxes are also a problem. It's suffocating us, all right? Whether it's a new gas tax maybe on the horizon, tolls going up, worry about citizens, worry about homeowners, whether or not illegals didn't get enough from a certain fund during the pandemic. I'm sorry, I don't care. That's not important to me. I know you're not going to say that, Senator. You're much more of a gentleman than I am to say it. I don't have to take the high road here. I care about citizens. As you mentioned, citizens has its privileges. And we're not looking after citizens. We're taking them for granted because we're trying to cater to a certain electorate or a certain demographic that, for whatever reason, Senator, Democrats live and die on this. And I'm hoping New Jerseyans wake up.
Well, they need to wake up. I mean, I've said this before. The term justice is attached to any number of words, whether it's educational justice, racial justice, social justice, environmental justice. I've said this from the Senate floor a number of times. When are we going to hear about taxpayer justice?
Never.
Under the gold dome. We need, but we need to, as you know. Yeah. I mean, this is what is so sad, and it's really despicable, because the taxpayers of New Jersey have had enough, and we've seen that. We have the greatest outward migration from out of any state in the United States of America. We have the most tax-stressed citizenry in the United States of America. We suffer from the largest brain drain in the United States of America. So people, our children who are growing up here, getting educated here, and look, we have phenomenal academic institutions right here in the state of New Jersey. But when a 22, 23-year-old youngster wakes up and they say, wait a minute, this is the amount of debt that I've amassed, and I'm going to have to live in my parents' basement for the next 5, 6, 7 years to pay it off. This isn't okay. I can go to, name the state, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Florida. You name the state, Georgia. It's a far better tax climate, warmer weather. And they say, I love New Jersey. I'm going to miss the pizza. I'm going to miss the food. I'm going to miss my family. But you know what I'm not going to miss? I'm not going to miss the taxes. So what? I'm going to have to pump my own gas. Big deal. At least there's not another gas tax on the horizon in the state that I'm looking to move to. We have to stop the bleeding. And this is exactly what I said when the governor wanted to borrow $9.8 billion. Remember that in 2020? I was, for those people that are the online warriors, by the way, on the right as well, who say sometimes, well, Senator Testa, what are you doing? You're not doing enough. Well, I sued the governor, and the Supreme Court of the state of New Jersey, due to the governor's emergency powers, allowed the governor to borrow $4.6 billion instead of $9.8 billion. And it turns out he didn't even need to borrow $4.6 billion because they had grossly underestimated the revenue stream coming in. And what did we do? We asked the governor to, number one, don't borrow the money. And if you are, don't make the bonds non-callable. What did he do? He rushed to borrow the money and he made the bonds non-callable. So this way, that $4.6 billion of additional debt will be on the backs of the taxpayers for decades. So, what can Republicans do? They need to make sure that the citizenry wakes up and that they understand that elections do matter, just like this last cycle. And I think we're going to see in the state of New Jersey, in our midterms here, we're going to see possibly one, if not two, additional congressional seats in the state of New Jersey for the Republican Party. And I guarantee you, in the legislative races that we have in 2023, we're going to see the pendulum swing even further back to a more balanced government, which is what we're supposed to have.
Absolutely, Senator. And folks, if you just joined us right now at 6:31 here on the East Coast, appreciate you joining us here on Jersey First via Facebook Live and on YouTube here. Joining me this week is State Senator Michael Testa out of LD1 down in South Jersey here on Real Talk. Senator, you mentioned the midterms. I'm glad it's a great way to segue to that. And again, listen, we saw what happened last November. I'm sure that the governor and sort of his inner circle was quite nervous on election night. We didn't learn the official result until about 48 hours later. But we saw what happened 5 hours south on Route 95 in Virginia. Now, Virginia is a very different political world than here, but a lot of the issues that governor ran on are no different than what we have to think about in 2022. And I talked about this with David Perrano, one of the governor's strategists. I also talked about with Chris Russell, Jack Chiarelli's campaign manager, just a couple of weeks ago. I think in 2022, it's a very interesting cycle. And I'm praying, I'm hoping that I don't have to say the words Speaker Pelosi after January 1st of 2023. I think Republicans have a really good chance here, and I hope so, to take the House. Because, again, we're seeing this ineptitude, this inefficiency of this democratically led House of Representatives. Now, up here in North Jersey, where I am at, listen, here in CD8, where I reside, Rob Menendez Jr. will be running in that seat for the now retired Albio Ceres. We all know, obviously, he is the son of senior United States Senator Robert Menendez Sr. We know next door in Bergen County, Josh Keitheimer seems pretty safe. Right next door in Passaic County, Bill Pascrell, who's, I don't know, like 150 years old, but he's like the emperor in like Star Wars. He's like Palpatine. He's like he's somehow like hooked up to a machine or something. I don't know. He's like still out there, breathing and going on some rants. But we know Congressman Payne, relatively safe district as well. It's not the case, though, Senator, in Central and South Jersey. I would argue that this is a prime opportunity for Republicans to seize a little bit of that momentum in the legislative races last November and try to flip some of these seats. Again, whether it's the Malinowski seat, the Andy Kim seat, I mean, Republicans, and again, and this is sort of, and I'm not taking a shot at him personally, but Chairman Bob Hugin, got to get to work, okay? It's President's Day. You got a lot of work to do. You got to make sure that you're running Republicans that can win their primaries, that can go on and win in November and take some House seats. Again, historically, Senator, we know that the opposing party tends to win the House of Representatives during the first midterms. It didn't happen maybe a handful of times. 2002 with George W. Bush, 1934, I believe, with FDR. But by and large, the opposing party tends to win the House. This is as good a chance as ever with so many Democrats retiring and the way that we're seeing Nancy Pelosi when she's not sipping down a cocktail or getting Botox. It's ineffective leadership. Republicans have to seize this moment. I'm concerned that might not be the case. Am I wrong?
Look, I think Republicans will be able to seize the moment as long as Republicans can figure out that we're not supposed to fight with each other. I mean, I've told you before, I'm an 11th Commandment Republican. And a big shout out to Chris Russell. Look, he was my GC in my first race in 2019, and I watched a portion of that interview that you did with him. I appreciated his analysis. One of the things that I always talk about, maybe it's because I'm a trial attorney and I look through politics through that lens for sure. It's not only what is said by members of the Democratic Party, but what is not said by them. And I think Republicans really need to seize on that. Most of these Democrats, especially the ones in South Jersey, they were far too afraid to say anything about the mandates coming out of the Murphy administration. They said nothing. And I called them the Simon and Garfunkel party. They were the sound of silence. That's all you heard from them. So, what did Andy Kim say about Governor Murphy? Nothing. What's he saying about Joe Biden's policy? What's he saying about inflation? What's he saying about the bare shelves at your supermarket? What's he saying about the price at the pump? Absolutely nothing, because he doesn't want to draw attention to this. So as long as Republicans are really willing to run, a real race, and I've said it many times before, you do not beat vanilla with French vanilla. You beat it with chocolate. As long as Republicans are able to run a very chocolate race, and they don't have to be in the mud to do so, but as long as they're willing to hold a mirror to the Democrats' bad behavior, their bad policy, their wokeism, I think they're going to be able to do really well for themselves. I mean, look, I've said it before. I think what's happening with President Biden is practically elder abuse. I think he's suffering from something pretty severe, cognitive issue, and I think it's wrong that he gets carted out there to make a fool of himself. I truly believe that. That doesn't show strength on the United States part whatsoever. And he's become. I mean, can you imagine if he had an R next to his name, the SNL skits that they would have had if this were Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, or George W. Bush? The skits would have been comical. It would have been.
Well, Senator, they were. Senator, if you remember back in the mid to late 2000s, I mean, the liberal media, pop culture, Hollywood loved to ridicule President George W. Bush and Vice President Cheney. They loved to ridicule President Trump and to some extent Vice President Pence. But right now, you have a guy, and I'll let you finish, I'm sorry. We have a president who, he cares about borders, right? Again, my heart goes out to the people of Ukraine with what's going on over there. But it's funny how the president and the vice president, who was supposedly put in charge of the border, they care about borders, in Ukraine. Well, how about caring about the southern border here? How about caring about this border and about the inflow of drugs and illegals coming across, right? In the last year alone, I think we have more than 1.1 million illegals coming into the United States, right? It's funny how the left loves borders and remembers that. Again, you're an attorney, so when you took constitutional law, there was something about borders, right? I read that somewhere in some document for sovereignty. Absolutely. I read that somewhere. And it's amazing to me how some legislators in Trenton or in Washington that have law degrees, God help us, must have slept through constitutional law 101 when it comes to sovereignty and all that. So I think it's despicable what's going on with Sleepy Joe. And you make a great reference about his cognitive decline.
I mean, look, someone far more famous than me once said that a nation without borders is not a nation. I mean, and the fact is that, and that's something that you also hear from the woke left, that, we shouldn't, we're all supposed to be this one world economy, this one world of a society. Well, no, then, guess what? I'm happy to be an American. I believe in a sovereign nation, and look at the amount of fentanyl that is coming over the border, and why deaths from drug overdoses have spiked so high, because they're not doing heroin anymore. Not that heroin's good whatsoever. It's not. But now it's laced with fentanyl, or they're getting, much higher purity levels of fentanyl, and they're dying. People are dying from this. We need to make sure that we have a very strong border. And if we don't have a border, we don't have a nation. I mean, it's as simple as that. I know, Senator Kaine, hopefully soon to be Congressman Kaine, had visited the border, and he and I had a conversation about it. And he was astounded at what he saw down there, and how, I hate to say this, outmatched our border patrol is because of the cartels that are on the other side and on our side, right? I mean, this is something that, Americans need to wake up and realize is happening in our nation. And, the butterfly effect of that. I mean, you get underground economies happening right here in our own nation because of the unfettered access that people have coming across the border. That is a very real problem. Never mind the fact that, I mean, you said in your words about how, you don't care about illegals, but think of what a strain they are right now, on our economy. The numbers are astounding, when they're put out there. I don't want to cite that because I don't recall the exact number, but it was, it's billions upon billions of dollars that are spent in our country each and every year, whether it's through our educational systems, through some of our social programs. It becomes a real issue, especially, in those border towns, in the southern part of our nation. But we have to start understanding that we have to protect our own border. But like you said, the hypocrisy is always rich and thick when it comes to the Democratic Party. They're concerned about the Ukrainian border as it pertains to Russia and Russia invading the Ukraine, but they're not necessarily worried about the influx of hundreds of thousands. And this isn't something about Mexicans, folks. I want to be really clear about that. We have no clue who is coming through that border. And guess what? Other nations who want to attack us internally know that as well. So this isn't just a Mexican and then an American problem. It's all of the folks who want to get into our nation illegally know that our southern border is exposed.
Absolutely. And it's just egregious on behalf of this administration to just sort of disregard. I mean, they care about borders outside of this continent. Worry about borders here. Worry about the fact, as you mentioned, the inflow of drugs, the inflow of just, again, and I love a lot of these leftist activists, Senator, that talk about, the contributions of immigrants. Listen, Senator, I'm the son of immigrants. Okay. I'm a first generation American. Okay. My mom left communism in Cuba. My dad left a really bad economy in Colombia. They came here, they worked hard, they learned the language, they assimilated. They're now happily retired, living off pensions because they worked hard. They taught me a strong work ethic. I understand the immigrant experience, as do you, because of your background. I get all that. But we're seeing schools being overcrowded, right? We're in New Jersey. Okay. We're seeing districts get overcrowded. We're seeing a burden being put on our social services, as you alluded to. It's just something where the left loves compassion. I say this all the time. It's like your heart's in the right place, but Senator, their heads are up their asses. Okay. And that's the simplest way to say it. I know you can't say that. I can say it for you. And I'll say it on behalf of other conservatives, where I think the left is really tone deaf. And we're seeing that during this election cycle. Let me ask you this, Senator. I know obviously
if I can say one thing, they're tone deaf until it's in their neighborhood, right? I mean, that's I mean, they are, I call them the NIMBY party all of the time, not in my backyard, right? These programs are great. They want every single social program under the sun until it's in their backyard, right? They don't want a rehabilitation facility in their backyard. They don't want a sober house in their neighborhood. Those are the types of things, again, why I say they're such hypocrites, because every time one of their policies rears its head close to their home, they don't like it. I mean, and we can just look at Nancy Pelosi's house and realize exactly the type of person that she is. She lives in a multi-million-dollar home that's gated, right? But she wants to be able to take your guns away from a lawful gun owner. And, getting back to what the midterms are all about, I truly believe, the left doesn't know how to control itself. And you talked about senators like a Stack and a Sacco, who are really throwbacks to a party that may not exist anymore. And if it does, it certainly doesn't get noticed enough. Like people that I could actually negotiate with and understand their position. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it. They're sort of throwbacks to the party of JFK, but they didn't leave their party left them. But the fact of the matter is, I think this year you're going to see a very similar year to 1994 when Newt Gingrich had the contract with America. I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a sea change in Congress. And I don't think that there's really anything that the Democratic Party can do about it, because they have gone so far left that they're not Democrats anymore. They are socialists. That's 100% what they are. They are taking pages right out of the book of Rules for Radicals, and they are Alinskyeites. That's what they are.
No, you're absolutely right, Senator. And folks, again, for everyone that's putting down the comments right now during the live broadcast, keep the comments coming. We appreciate you here on Jersey First via Facebook Live and also on StreamYard and on YouTube here, as State Senator Michael Testa joins us here tonight on Real Talk. Senator, one of the more interesting congressional races, obviously in South Jersey, is in CD3. I spoke with Chris Russell again a couple of weeks ago. I know he's representing Mr. Healy, who's running in that district, but there's also another man running in CD3. He's become a viral sensation since the spring of 2020. He's the co-owner of the Attila's Gym down in Belmar, New Jersey, not Belmar down along the Jersey Shore, but down in Southwest Jersey. Ian Smith. Now, he's been a guy who's come on this show, but he's been a viral sensation, though, Senator. He's been on Fox News. He's been on Tucker Carlson. He's been on Sean Hannity. I mean, he's been that viral guy that's taken to social media, him along with his partner, Frank Trombetti, who collectively owned the Attila's Gym down in South Jersey. He's thrown his name into the ring. Obviously being represented by Steve Kush, sort of the brains behind the upset win by Ed Durr in LD3 last year, along with the rest of the ticket. I know Steve Kush is a very, very calculating and very intelligent operative. And we know that Ian Smith has thrown his name into the ring. He's a polarizing guy. I like Ian. We've talked off the air. I'm looking forward to having him back on the show, as well as Mr. Healy. But, that's a race that people are going to be watching during this primary season, because what type of Republican is going to win in that district during the primary? Is it someone like Healy, who's going to have a lot of establishment Republicans behind him? He's been getting a lot of donors. Obviously, those that donate money to Jack Ciattarelli during the last campaign, obviously, are going to perhaps go to Mr. Healy's side. On the other hand, Mr. Smith is sort of raising money online through his popularity, through his activism, through the fact that he's sort of looked upon symbolically as a hero, staying up to Governor Murphy, being prosecuted because of what happened, being penalized by the governor and the attorney general in Trenton. That's a really interesting race, because I would argue that whoever wins that Republican primary could really give Andy Kim headaches in CD3. How do you see that matchup?
Look, anybody that's represented by Steve Kush, I don't think can be underestimated. I've known Steve Kush since Governor Christie's first gubernatorial run. I mean, Steve Kush is very good friends with the former Cumberland County Republican Chairman Bob Greco when I served as vice chair. You said about Kush how he's calculating. Look, the guy knows how to win.
Yeah, he does.
So I don't know Ian Smith personally. I've spoken to him, I believe, one time on the phone, probably back in 2020, when the mandates came down and his gym was shut. I want to speak, though. The original Attila's Gym was in Wildwood, New Jersey. My brother used to work out there regularly, and I believe worked there for a period of time. I mean, that's kind of a legendary name in South Jersey bodybuilding and powerlifting circles. Healy, obviously, I've met him a few times. Great young man. I've met his father. They own a wonderful company in Viking Yachts. Look, they're both formidable individuals. It depends on who's going to come out and vote in the primary. I mean, it's amazing. What I've seen as a county chairman and as the senator, I can tell you that I'll check people who I think are devout Republicans, and I'll find out that they haven't voted in a primary in 15 years or 20 years. And you say to yourself, it really is kind of disturbing. So, I don't think you can count anybody out in a primary. And whoever does come out of that primary can really give Andy Kim some headaches, because, again, what has he done to buck the establishment of a Joe Biden? What has he done to buck the establishment of someone like Phil Murphy? These people have been completely silent. Instead of saying, hey, look, let's talk about the mask mandate for March 7th that's suddenly miraculously being lifted, this date that Governor Murphy has so arbitrarily picked. And I've criticized him publicly about that. I said, if now that you've decided it, make it tomorrow, make it today, not March 7th. Let our kids be unmasked. But you haven't heard any of these Democrats sort of say, you know what, I agree with Mike Testa, because they're not allowed to, right? I mean, they may personally, and sometimes they'll see me in the halls of Trenton and say, you know what, you're really right about that. Well, okay, then why don't you say something? But they can't say anything. And it's really sad.
Just have a spine. I mean, have a spine. I get it that you're loyal to a party, but at the end of the day, like, serve your constituents. Have a spine. Stand up to the governor when he's wrong, as if it's never happened before, like under Governors Christie, Corzine, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's never happened. Like, have a spine, especially when it comes to these COVID mandates, Senator, that have just suffocated us, that have really killed small businesses, that are never returning again, that is doing just irreparable harm to our children. And again, I sort of go back, and I really don't want to hammer my colleagues, but what a disservice by the liberal media in this state that don't really hammer the governor or the Democratic establishment enough, because I'm sure a lot of them have kids I'm sure a lot of their neighbors have kids too, or they have family members. It's really disappointing where it's either legislators or so-called, journalists that don't have a spine to sort of call out what I would say is irreparable harm to our communities, especially to our kids, Senator.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, Fernando, this is what's so laughable. Sometimes I turn on Bill Maher on Friday nights late at night, and he's actually agreeing with the actual science and bashing the radical left. I mean, it was probably about 2 months ago now, maybe even a little bit more. I'm watching it one night, and I believe I already had a bill out to recognize natural immunity. And look, I already had a bill out previously that I don't want any vaccine passports. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. We shouldn't have that at all. But if we are going to have them, then we should at least recognize natural immunity. I mean, that's something that's been recognized by medicine and science for, over a century. We should at least recognize it. Bill Maher is talking about this, saying we're the only civilized country not recognizing natural immunity. And yet here in the state of New Jersey, not one Democrat agreed to hop onto that bill or to speak out against the governor and the policies of the woman who needs no introduction, Judith Perzacilli, and say, hey, look, shouldn't we be recognizing natural immunity? I mean, this is such basic stuff. If we can't get the members of the Democratic Party to agree with us on this, how are we going to get them to agree on anything? So it's actually painted them into a corner. And I think every Republican running should be talking about that, about the sound of silence, that hey, when someone like Senator Testa put something out there that was really low-hanging fruit for them to grab onto and say, I agree with them, we should actually follow the science. They couldn't do it.
I'm with you, Senator. And I'm hoping that in 2022, more of your colleagues are going to have a spine and stand up for these things because it's really, really crucial. Speaking about Trenton, obviously a new Senate president, new leadership there in Trenton, obviously State Senator Nicholas Scutari out of Union County. Sort of, the power structure's changed, Senator, where again, with the exodus of Steve Sweeney, obviously no longer being the state senator down in LD3, and obviously now we're seeing State Senator Scutari as the Senate president. I believe Senator Ruiz is now the majority leader, stepping in after the retirement of Loretta Weinberg. I mean, it's a very different apparatus now, right? It seems like all the power is sort of now in central Jersey, and it seems like North and South Jersey have to sort of maybe play ball with them now. During this legislative session, any conversations you've had with the Senate president, any clashes? Do you feel you'll be able to work with him on bills that need to get done during this session?
Yeah, Senator Scutari and I have a relationship that goes back to long before I was in the legislature. We both are trial lawyers. We knew each other from a trial lawyers association that used to be called, ATLA New Jersey. Now it's New Jersey Association for Justice. So we know each other from that organization. He's a really, to be honest with you, on most things that I've seen from him, he's been very, very level-headed. He has an open phone and an open door policy, much like Senate President Sweeney had, who I had a great relationship with because we are both truly South Jersey. That's one thing I will say. And, to me, Union County's not Central Jersey. So, that's North Jersey to me. I have to tell you, the sad part is that because we don't have the Senate president from South Jersey, my fear is that South Jersey is not going to be heard as much, especially because if you look at South Jersey, now you have 1, 2, 3, 8, most of 11, really your shore communities. And then you have the other shore communities all represented by Republicans, but we're in the minority party. And as you know, it's always so funny to me. This is what we're told. Well, you have to be able to work across the aisle. You have to be able to work across the aisle. We try. The assumption that they're operating under is that we are not trying to, work across the aisle. The fact is that guess what? They don't need to work with us. They know if they have 24 votes, they don't need to talk to us. That's all they need. They need the 24 votes. They can get 16 no's from the Republicans, and it doesn't matter to them. That's the truth, and that's. I don't know what ideal world people are thinking of in this utopia. It doesn't happen. That's not how it happens. And if they don't need us, they don't, we don't get spoken to. And that's what happened under Senate President Sweeney. That's what's going to happen until we get much closer as far as representatives in the legislature, whether it's 2119, praise God, if it's 2020, then we need each other. Then there'll be a lot more discussions across the aisle. And I also say this about how radical, some of the, how far left some people have gone. People say you need to meet in the middle. I said, I can't meet in their middle. I said, their middle is far left of JFK. How can I meet there? I said, they're not meeting in the actual middle anymore. I said, there is an actual middle, and their middle isn't it. Their middle is, slightly right of, Joe Biden right now. Well, that doesn't cut it for us, right? That we can't keep compromising our principles. It doesn't work.
I agree with you, Senator. And it seems that, listen, Republicans made some gains last November. We're hoping next year during the legislative races in 23 that Republicans can continue to make progress. We're hoping that in 2022, obviously under the leadership of Bob Hugin, the state chair, and other Republican apparatuses, that they're able to, again, win some congressional seats and have that momentum carry over into 2023. Let's hope so, because as you mentioned, Democrats have had solid majorities for 20 years now. So whenever people say, "No, Fernando, you're too harsh on the establishment, you're too harsh on the legislature," well, I have to be, because Democrats have controlled it with big majorities for over 20 years now. So when people say, well, why is New Jersey a dump? Why are people relocating to Florida or the Carolinas, or, moving down to Georgia, even there, okay? It's because one party has had solid rule in this state for 2 decades, and they make it unaffordable. They've never met a tax they don't like. And I think that's where, hey, it's not harsh on my part. Those are facts. And unfortunately, facts inconvenience people, Senator. And, I'm not about, listen, facts don't care about your feelings, as the great philosopher Ben Shapiro once said, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Look, I've said it before, and I kind of came up with this during the 2019 campaign, and Assemblyman McClellan and Simonson, we talk about it because, sometimes things come out of your mouth and you're surprised at how good they sound, right? But it was absolutely true. Prior to me speaking at an event that we had in Vineland, it was nothing more South Jersey than a custard stand where we had a rally. A woman said to me, she said, I'm really upset with the way this state has become. Unless it's Easter, Christmas, or Thanksgiving, I'm not seeing my grandchildren. I'm singing happy birthday via my smartphone. And I said, is that the future that everybody wants? And it really rallied the crowd, because I said, grandparents here are really seeing their grandchildren through FaceTime, and they're wishing them a happy birthday. They're not there blowing the candles out and watching that happen with them. They're there via FaceTime. And it's just, we're living in this society that has gotten so much closer together via technology, but we've been spread apart because of horrible policies that have been coming out of Trenton for the past 20 years, right? I mean, that's really what's happened. It's driven older people away. One of my good friends growing up, his father is immensely successful. God bless him. He hates Florida, but he has to be there because the tax structure is so much better for him. And he calls me and tells me, he goes, all these people, he's just one of those workaholics. He'll never stop working, my friend's father. And he's a brilliant, brilliant man. And he's a multimillionaire. God bless him. He says, Michael, I don't like being here. This isn't what I like. I like being in Vineland. He goes, but I have to make sure I'm here, for however many specific days he has to be there to get the tax benefit. And guess what? He's there to the day, keeps a log and makes sure, and then he's back here in Vineland. I mean, but he's missing out on a lot of things that are happening with his family here, but he'd have to be an utter fool to continue to pay the taxes of the state of New Jersey.
I agree with you, Senator. And again, I applaud you for being that champion of not just conservative principles, but like fiscal responsibility, and being that voice, that commonsensical voice that I think is lacking, not just in the legislature, but I think really in Republican circles, where we're not seeing those vocal leaders like yourself. So I always applaud you for that. I always applaud you for being a gentleman to come on this show. Before I let you go here, and for our audience at home, something you may not know about State Senator Testa is that he, like myself, is a devoted pro wrestling fan. And of course, it is February, and we know that for those of us who follow professional wrestling, it's indeed the road to Wrestlemania. Wrestlemania, wow, 38 will emanate from Cowboy Stadium in the great state of Texas, coming up on April 1st and 2nd. It's a 2-night affair. And, listen, I love pro wrestling forever. Senator, we're kind of in the same age demographic. I know I'm a little older, I think, than you are probably, but we've loved pro wrestling since our youth. And when we talk about Wrestlemania, we have to sort of talk about the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling in our lifetimes. And I'll sort of go first here. I'm really curious about your answer, but I would say that my Mount Rushmore would have to consist of Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, the Undertaker, and Hulk Hogan. I think that those four guys have been instrumental in really just enhancing pro wrestling for the last 4 decades, really, in our lifetimes. That's my Mount Rushmore. What say you, Senator?
Ours are very close. I think I've been convinced, through all of the analytics that the Undertaker deserves to be on there. My number one is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, I've been wooing since as far back as I can remember. I can even tell you I had friends of mine on my little league team that we called ourselves the Four Horsemen when we were 9 years old. So we were huge fans. And back then I happened to, I thought Nikita Koloff was just one of the best characters in wrestling back then. But number one would be Ric Flair for me. There's no way you can have a Mount Rushmore that does not have Hulk Hogan on it, even though I think he's very limited in his wrestling abilities. But I mean, I think he came along at the right time, just how large he was. He was in Rocky III as Thunder Lips. I mean, so I have to have the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. I have to give a nod to the Undertaker, because you know what else is amazing about the Undertaker? Those in the industry who talk about the Undertaker all applaud the Undertaker, and they just say what a great wrestler he actually was, and how and there's other people who are superstars that others in the industry don't like. He seems to be universally really well liked. And I have to go with Sting. I have to say, Sting, back in his days when he was actually wrestling with Jim Hellwig, who became the Ultimate Warrior, I watched them all the way through when they were with WCWW. Then they went to, obviously, the NWA, and Ultimate Warrior came to, and when he was just the Warrior, came to WWF. So I have to go with Sting. I wasn't a huge fan of that Crow type turn that he had in the 90s, but I still think his athleticism, and I think he's 62 years old at this point, and the fact that he's still doing it and beating up his body impresses the heck out of me. So those are my four.
Listen, it's a hard list to come up with, Senator, because it's so subjective. And credit to Steve Borden, the man known as Sting, who's still wrestling for right now for All Elite Wrestling down in the Florida-based company owned by Tony Khan, the son of Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's good to see him still hopefully keeping safe. I'll be at 62. Gotta be a little careful when you take those table bumps now. But
sure.
Very interesting list, though, Senator. But again, it's the road to WrestleMania. Can you believe it? 38 WrestleManias. My God, I feel old, Senator.
I don't feel young, that's for sure. I feel really good, but I don't feel young. I remember again when Mr. T was at WrestleMania, when the biggest turn I think ever, obviously, was when Hulk Hogan was able to body slam Andre the Giant. I mean, these were pivotal moments of an American red-blooded youth, So, every one of us back then was tuned in. There were a lot of years with pro wrestling I didn't really like it. I think it had gotten away from its core family entertainment that it was supposed to be. I think they're getting back to it now. They realize that, it took a pretty hard turn to just hypersexualizing, the genre, which I wasn't a real big fan of, especially because I think kids should be able to watch it. But, look, I probably won't tune into WrestleMania, but, I definitely watch it when it's on. That's for sure.
Absolutely. It's a great form of entertainment. And listen, my students make fun of me and they'll laugh, or people that will laugh at me and say, you watch pro wrestling. My response is, hey, you watch Marvel movies? You watch the Kardashians? Leave me alone.
That's exactly right.
But I like what you like. Exactly. Senator, before I let you go, I want to thank you for your time. You're always a gentleman to come on. I really appreciate the fact that how you respect this show, and appreciate me as a journalist, because there aren't a lot of journalists like me out there really talking about these issues. And I love to sort of ridicule my colleagues in the field because it's so easy. But I really appreciate the time that you take to come on this program, and how much, again, the respect that we have for each other. I'm 100%. Eternally grateful to you. I'll give you the last word, Senator.
Look, Fernando, it's people like you that we need to keep fighting the good fight. I say it all of the time. I host a breakfast every 2 weeks for the Cumberland GOP as county chair, and it's an open breakfast. And I tell everybody, look, the media isn't going to be our friend. They're not going to cover us. So what we need to do is the like and share, right? That's the way. We have to be our own media. in reality, you've blended actual media with social media. So, I mean, Fernando, you really need to be applauded for what it is that you're doing. Number one, you're unabashed in your opinions. And number two, you're correct. So it's easy for you. Number three, the left gives you so much low-hanging fruit that I'm sure you don't know which piece of fruit to pick first. That's what I always say to my folks. But, the best thing that we can do as conservatives who are trying to be a voice in what seems like, the abyss sometimes, is to like and share each other's work, because that's so important. And again, you've sort of made this unbelievable combination of actual journalism with social media. And if that combines, it could catch on like wildfire. And I think that you really are doing a good job of doing that. So just all I can say is, Fernando, keep up the phenomenal work that you're doing. Keep up the good fight. And people say to me, Mike, where do you get your energy from? I said, listen, us kids from Vineland, we're all born with a chip on our shoulder, and we all fight with each other until it's time to fight somebody else. So that's where we're at. And let's just keep up the good fight, brother.
Senator, thank you so much for those kind words. I really appreciate it. It's a shame I only get to see you once a year at the league where we take a great picture. I'm hoping, as the weather gets warmer, I'm going to have to make a trip down South Jersey. Let's grab a bite to eat or something. Again, just seeing you once a year at the league, I don't think is good enough. I think let's try to get together this summer and catch up. And again, let's just, same for you. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep being that voice of like just common sense in Trenton. And once again, I want to thank you for joining us here on Real Talk via Jersey First.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Take care.
Thank you, Senator. Have a good one.
You too.
Well, folks, I got to tell you, the state senator is always a delight to have on this show because, again, what he says resonates with so many regular New Jerseyans. And you don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be a Democrat. Again, just have some common sense when it comes to economics, when it comes to what can make New Jersey more affordable, what's going to keep people in New Jersey. That's why the senator is so great to have on this show. And again, I'm proud to have him on since this show started back in June of 2020. And to see how far it's come in almost 2 years now is really a testament to my guest. It's not me, folks. And again, I'm deeply humbled by his kind words tonight, as I am by other guests. And you know me, I'm the least humble person you will ever meet. But I'm deeply humbled when I hear those sort of flattering remarks by State Senator Testa and other guests that I have, because, folks, it's important to be able to talk about these issues on an everyday basis and to talk about them weekly with guests that are going to get you thinking and to get you wanting to read and research. And that's what this show is all about, folks. Again, as I mentioned, the premise behind Real Talk was to be that disruption in the liberal media establishment here in New Jersey, right? And I'm proud to be the disruptor. And I say that with pride all the time because listen, we all know the huge disservice that the liberal media here in New Jersey is doing to us, to taxpayers, to homeowners, right? I can list them all, right? NJTV with Uncle Dave, right? Insider NJ with Maxie Pizarro, little JJ Lassiter, Tom Moran with the Star Ledger, all right? Other journalists that, quite frankly, are focusing on the wrong issues as usual. I get it. You want to be sanctimonious. You want to write what you write about. God bless you. But write about things that matter to everyday New Jerseyans, okay? And that's what this show's about. This show is about making sure that I don't contribute to the sort of the madness of the Lollipop Guild that I just referenced, okay? That I'm able to talk about issues that matter to you. And folks, again, that's why I'm so proud to be now on with Jersey First, because that's what we're dedicated to doing. We're dedicated to talking about the issues that matter to you, to making New Jersey more affordable, to make sure that we hold our legislators accountable for, again, irresponsible spending, for making sure that we don't coddle. I mean, we coddle illegals enough as it is, obviously. We don't want to do it more. But again, it's about being those individuals that just are going to sound the alarms. They're going to say, hey, we need to wake up. We need to hold our legislators accountable in Trenton to make sure that they're not suffocating us with taxation and regulations. And that's what's happening. And folks, again, that's why I'm so proud to be a part of Jersey First, because that's what we're going to do. I, along with Elizabeth Nader, are going to keep doing this. We're going to keep making noise. We're going to keep asking the tough questions. We're going to keep getting those exclusive guests that you're not going to see on other media programs and talking about things that matter to everyday New Jerseyans, right? Things that'll get you thinking, things that'll want to get you to read more and be more invested, to go to school board meetings, right? To be holding municipal governments accountable, to be holding state governments accountable. That is what we are encouraging here on Jersey First, and we're not going to stop, especially on this show. Well, folks, that's our show for this week here. Once again, thank you so much for joining us here. You can check out the replay of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, obviously on Jersey First, at www.jerseyfirst.org. That's Jersey, the number 1 ST.org. Make sure you like Jersey First on Facebook. Of course, follow it on both Instagram and Twitter. And also check out Jersey First on our YouTube page. Yes, many new subscribers coming on a daily basis. Great amount of views. Folks, we're getting the message out. We're making a difference. We're making people pay attention because you know what? Now more than ever, we need to do that. We need to hold those in Trenton accountable for what makes New Jersey expensive, unaffordable, and in some cases, unlivable. We'll continue to fight for you each and every week here, folks, again, on Jersey First. Always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always real talk right here with Jersey First. I am New Jersey's premier journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine, and certainly the sworn enemy of all the Latte liberals, do-nothing, useless progressives, social justice clowns, and all the woke fools just making New Jersey toxic on a daily basis. But it's me, Fernando Uribe, standing up against all of them, and I'll continue to do so quite proudly each and every day. I'll see you next week here, folks. And once again, enjoy President's Day. Enjoy time with your family and friends. Let's go Rutgers as we, again, approach March Madness just around the corner. And I'll see you next week here, folks. Once again, on Jersey First, via StreamYard, Facebook Live, and also on YouTube. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.